friends, welcome back to another episode of Commander Dive. We're looking at another Duskmourn commander, Nashi, Searcher in the Dark. I'm really excited for this one. And coming Friday is our Duskmourn commander tier list video, so put that on your calendar and check that out. As always, I'm Adam, and this is Commander Tax. Nashi, Searcher in the Dark. This is a Demir commander. It's blue-black, rat ninja wizard, great creature type. It's a 2/2. It has menace, and it says whenever Nashi, Searcher in the Dark, deals combat damage to a player, you mill that many cards. You may put any number of legendary and or enchantment cards from among them into your hand. If you put no cards in your hand this way, put a 1/1 counter on Nashi. So the idea here with this deck is to fill it up with enchantments and legendary creatures. And we're going to lean into the legendary side a little bit more, but we still have tons of enchantments to look at. Let's get into our first category today. Legends. Our first card today is Basim. I can't say the rest of this. Demir, blue-black. It's a human assassin from Assassin's Creed. And it says whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. It can't be blocked this turn. This ability triggers only once each turn. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on it. So because we have a ton of legends in this deck, it means that we're going to draw a card every turn, hopefully every turn, and it's going to get bigger and bigger every time it hits because it's going to be unblockable, means that it's become a threat very quickly, and it's going to have to be removed. And if someone's using a premium removal on this, they're not using it on Nashi, and that works out in our favor. So, great card. Now we got Rona, Herald of the Invasion. This is 1 in a blue, and it says whenever you cast a legendary spell, you untap it. You can tap it, draw a card, and discard a card, so you can sift your deck very well with this. Then you can pay 5 in a Phyrexian mana, which means you can pay 2 life or a black, and you can transform it. So this transforms into Rona Tolarian Obliterator. It's got trample. It's a 5/5, and whenever a source deals damage to Rona, that source's controller exiles a card from their hand at random. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Otherwise, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. No one's going to want to block this. The only way it's going to get removed is with an exile spell. So this is really good for our deck because it means 5 damage each turn, and having more damage on board is always a positive, right? Next up, we have a really synergistic card. This is Raul Troubleshooter. This is 1 blue-black, zombie mutant rogue from Fallout. And it says once during each of your turns, you may cast a spell from among cards in your graveyard that were milled this way. Why is this synergistic? Well, Nashi only allows us to get enchantments and legends from our graveyard. This will allow us to play our spells, our instants, sorceries, and artifacts, which we have no other way to get back. So this works really well. We don't care as much about its ability to tap and everyone mills a card, but it does have a 4 toughness, so it's really difficult to remove. Just an awesome synergistic card for this deck. Next up, we have Ink Eyes, Servant of Oni. This is 4 and 2 blacks, or it's 3 and 2 blacks for its ninjutsu cost. And whenever Ink Eyes, Servant of Oni deals combat damage to a player, you may put a target creature from that player's graveyard into play under your control. It's a 5/4, and then you can pay 1 and a black to regenerate Ink Eyes. So for a 5 cost, instant speed, drop on the board, deal 5 damage, and then you can regenerate it. Like, this is awesome. The fact that it has an ability that you can steal something from somebody's graveyard, like, that makes it even better. And the fact is, this is only in 0.005% of decks. Like, I understand this is a ninja and it's a rat, so if you're not doing a rat or ninja deck, it's not on theme. But if you're just doing a good stuff deck, this is awesome. Like, Nashi, like, we're not doing a rat theme. I mean, granted, I'm throwing a little other rats in here just to give it a little bit of theme, but in general, like, this is just a great black card that should probably be in more decks. So a great spotlight here. Next up, we have Sig River Cutthroat. This is 2 hybrid mana of blue and black, and it says Merfolk Rogue at the beginning of each end step. If an opponent lost 3 or more life, it's not going to be hard to do in this deck because we have a bunch of unblockable creatures. You may draw a card, and it's a 1/3, so we're going to draw lots of cards if we can get this on the board. And that is the end of the Legends category. Let's move on to our next one, which is going to be, you guessed it, Enchantments. There are a ton of enchantments in this deck. We are just going to look at 6 here that I want to spotlight. The first up is Bitter Blossom. It's 1 and a black pip for a tribal enchantment fairy. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature token with flying. So why do we have this in our deck? Well, we don't have a lot of flyers. So creating tokens that are flyers are going to help us deal with flying decks and also token decks. Really good card here. Next up, we have Dissipation Field. It's 2 and 2 blue pips. This is 1 more than Ghostly Prison, but I actually think this is better than that card. And I'll explain that here in a second. It says, whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return it to its owner's hand. So Ghostly Prison is going to tax your opponent 2 mana for each attacking creature, right? Well, in this situation, whether they're doing direct damage, aka combat damage, or indirect damage with pings, they have to pick that creature up and replay it. And guess what? That creature most likely is more than 2 CMC, especially in a casual game. And so this is going to tax them for even more. Yes, you take the damage, but you have a little bit more damage to take in Commander. And this is really good against aristocrats, which like to do tons of ping damage and can be really hard to deal with in general. So really love this card. Really excited to see how it's played. And moving on. All right, now we have Black Market. This is 3 and 2 black pips, and your Bitter Blossom is going to come in handy here because you have token fodder that you're going to be allowed to block with if they're stupid enough to attack you. If they don't, you're just going to build up a whole bunch of fairy rogues. Eventually, you'll be able to cash them in for this, but it says whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on Black Market. So all those fairies are going to add up, and then theoretically, during everybody else's turn, they're losing creatures too. So this in a couple of turns is going to be worth a lot of mana. And it says at the beginning of your pre-comet mana phase, add black mana for each charge counter on Black Market. I'm guessing you're going to have 5-6 mana you get from this. It can be really valuable, really important card for this deck because we're constantly refilling our hand with Nashi, and we have to have mana to be able to play that stuff. So moving on, now we have Doomwaker Giant. This is 4 and a black pip for an enchantment creature giant. It's got Constellation. Whenever it or another enchantment enters, creatures your opponent's control gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So the first time you play this, you're going to get rid of a whole bunch of tokens probably. The next turn, if this is still on the board, depending on how many enchantments you play, you can actually board wipe. It can be really good for that. However, in most cases, you're probably just going to remove 1 or 2 things and just a good static creature. Next up, we have Demonic Embrace. You get this on the field, and you're never going to be without it because it's 1 and 2 black pips, enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+1, has flying, and a demon in addition to its other type. And here's the important part. You may cast Demon Embrace from your graveyard by paying 3 life and discarding a card in addition to paying its other costs. Most of the time, this is going to be valuable to you because you're going to have a very large hand. And so discarding one's not going to be such a big deal. You pay your 3 life, and then Nashi is going to have an additional +3 attack, which means you're going to be able to mill 3 more cards. So as long as you're not getting low on cards, you're going to be able to, refill your hand a lot easier with this on the board. So once you get it out, unless it gets exiled, you're just going to keep playing it over and over again. Next up, we have Octopus Umbra. This is 3 and 2 blue pips. It's an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature has base power and toughness 8/8, and whenever this creature attacks, you may tap target creature with power 8 or less. Love all the totems. This is no different, so it becomes an 8/8, and then you can tap down a creature. It's really good with Nashi because if they have 2 creatures, you can tap 1, and now because it has menace, it's unblockable, and you're going to swing in and do 8 damage, milling 8 cards rather than the 2 or the 3, and you're going to be able to add a lot more back to your hand. It also has the totem armor. If enchanted creature would be destroyed instead, remove all damage from it and destroy this aura. So really good synergistic card. And that is it for that category. Let's move on to tokens. Our first token card today is Wand of Orcus. This is 2 and a black for a legendary artifact equipment. That's right. So if we mill this with Nashi, we get to put it into our hand, and that's awesome because this is an awesome card. Whenever a equipped creature attacks or blocks, it and zombies you control gain Death Touch until end of turn. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create that many 2/2 black zombie creature tokens, equip 3. So let's just take an example here. Let's say you have the Octopus Umbra already attached to Nashi. You're going to go ahead and equip this. They have 2 creatures. You attack. You get to tap 1 down. Now he's unblockable. He has menace, so he's going to hit for 8. You're going to get to mill 8 cards, put 3 or 4 of them probably into your hand, and then you're going to create 8 2/2 zombies. Really good value and a great card for this deck. Next up, we got Ren the Relentless. This is 2, a blue, and a black for legendary creature, Rat Rogue, Ward 2, so hard to remove, 3/4 body. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead, so a little bit of graveyard hate here. At the beginning of each end step, create a X11 black rat creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each other rat you control, where X is the number of creatures your opponents controlled that were exiled this turn. What does this mean? Well, this means if you have Nashi, you have Ren, and you have a couple other creatures, and you're going to swing in with Nashi and your 2 other creatures, right? And let's say Nashi gets through and then 2 of their creatures die. Well, now they're exiled, and you're going to get 2 1/1 rats because you're counting them up, right? And so now you have 4 rats total. So those 2 rats get +4/+4, which means that they're 5/5s. That means you swung in and killed 2 of their creatures, and then you're rewarded with 2 5/5 rats. Really cool effect. You leave this on the table for a few turns, it will just take over a game and will win it for you straight up. So really cool card and one that works really well in this deck. Next up, we have Tormod the Desecrator, one of my favorite cards. This is 3 and a black. Zombie Wizard, whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. So let's take that previous example. We have Wand of Orcus, right? We have Octopus Umbra. We swing in and we're able to hit for 8 damage. You're going to create 8 2/2 tokens, right? Well, now you're going to mill 8 and 4 of those cards, let's say, come back. Because they're actually being milled, it means they're in their graveyard. So you're going to create an additional 4. So you would actually create a total of 12 zombies. An awesome combination, combo, whatever you want to call it, to deal with Tormod and a couple other cards. So this is our zombie sub-theme, and you can just have a zombie army attacking your opponent next turn. Really cool. Next up, we have the Cyber Controller. This is X, 2 blue, and a black for a legendary artifact creature, Cyberman. When the Cyber Controller enters the battlefield, each opponent mills X cards. Put all creature cards milled this way onto the battlefield face down under your control. They're 2/2 Cyberman artifact creatures. Other artifact creatures you control get +1/+1. So this belong in this deck? No! This is what you call a pet card. There's very little synergy, very little reason to run this in this deck, except that I want to. You know, it's okay to run a couple of pet cards to have fun with and just add because you think they're cool. So just remember that in Casual Commander, it's all about having fun, and that it's okay to throw in a couple cards. I just put that in here to kind of stress that point. Just kind of a cool card. I'll probably run it for 5 games, play it a couple times, and who knows? Maybe I build a Commander deck with this, or maybe I'm building some other deck, and because I played this before, I'm like, man, that synergy is really good, and can come up with some other combo. So I'll get off my soapbox, but just wanted to stress, to have fun, guys. That's what this is all about. All right, moving on. Lord Skitter, Sewer King. This is 2 and a black for legendary creature Rat Noble. Whenever another rat enters the battlefield under your control, exile up to 1 target card from an opponent's graveyard at the beginning of combat. On your turn, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. So the can't block part kind of sucks here, but it's going to give us some attacking tokens. It'll have some synergy with Vren, and also, it has the graveyard hate, which is really the important part here, and then a little bit of rat synergy. So everything else. All right, now we have everything else, and if you've watched any of these videos before, everything else just means it's everything that didn't fit into one of the other categories that I still wanted to spotlight. So the first card up here is Cridle of Baldur's Gate. This is just a blue and a black. It says, when it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses 1 life and mills 1 card, and you gain 1 life and scry 1. So the scry 1 is going to be really useful to us because when we hit with our Nashi, we want to be able to get something good. So if this is early in the game, this can guarantee that we hit something that we can actually get out of our graveyard. And then it also has, whenever you attack, you may pay 2. If you do, target creature can't be blocked this turn. So if they are running a token theme and you still want to hit with Nashi, this is great because you can pay 2 and make sure that he's unblockable. Really cool synergistic card here. Now we have Cyclonus the Saboteur. This is 2, a blue and a black. Legendary artifact creature robot. This is a Transformers card, more than meets the eye for 7, so you can play the opposite side if you pay 5 blue black. It's got flying. Whenever Cyclonus deals combat damage to a player, it connives. Then if Cyclonus's power is 5 or greater, converted. So what is connive? Connive is draw a card, discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, you put a 1/1 counter, so that's how you would get it up to 5. So you do that 3 times. And man, the ability is worth it. So when you flip it over, he's flying, and then whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you convert it again. But when you convert it back to the other side, you get an additional beginning phase after this phase, which is going to be your untap, upkeep, and draw. So that means you get to untap all your lands, you get to draw a card. We're not playing into the upkeep part, but just really valuable in a deck like this. Almost feels like a red ability in a Demir card. Just love this. Moving on, we have Fear of Sleep Paralysis. This is 5 and a blue. This is a new card from Duskmourn. It's a nightmare enchantment creature, flying. And then I love this ability. Whenever Fear of Sleep Paralysis or another enchantment you control enters, or it has unlock a room, we're not running any rooms, but tap up to one target creature and put a stun counter on it. Here's the great part. Stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponent's control. So like basically you tap them down forever until they remove this card, which is just spectacularly salty and fun. All right, next up, I just have to talk about this card. I love this card. It's Withering Torment. It's 2 and a black. For an instant, it says destroy target creature or enchantment. Enchantment removal for black? Are you kidding me? Yes. Does have you lose 2 life, but in Commander, that's not a big deal. This is awesome, guys. You only had Feed the Swarm and like one other card, so having this to where you can actually remove an enchantment, I love it. I love playing this card. Thank you, Wizards, for making it possible in this part of the color pie to remove enchantments. Just an awesome card. I hope they do a few more like this. Maybe overpowered, I don't know, but this is my favorite new card from Duskmourn. All right, moving on, we have Grima, Sauron's Footman. This is 2, a blue and a black. This is a theft card. He can't be blocked, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles cards from the top of their library until they hit an instant or sorcery. It's exiled. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then that player puts the exiled cards that weren't cast this way on the bottom of their library in random order. So this basically means that when you hit with Grima, that you get to cast a instant or sorcery off the top of your opponent's library, whichever comes first as they mill them out. Yeah, so on and so forth. But really cool card to, maybe get a cool spell off your opponent. Moving on, we got a cool older card. I believe this is Shadowmoor. Helm of the Gas Lord, 3 and a hybrid mana, blue-black. Enchanted Aura. So as long as enchanted creature is blue, it gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature deals combat damage, draw a card. As long as this creature is black, it gets +1/+1 and has whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, that player discards a card. So basically can force our opponents to discard their hands slowly, and it's going to draw us a bunch of cards. Just a great way to get card advantage over the table. And that is everything else. Let's move on to our last category. Copy. We've already got a ton going on in this deck. We've got rats, we've got ninjas, we've got zombies, we've got transformers, we got Cybermen, we got all sorts of stuff going on in this deck, right? We're going to add another layer here, guys. And I'm going to be honest, this will probably not be the end of this deck. I probably will play it, and after I build it, and I'll refine it down. But let's take a look at these copy cards and see why they're in this deck. The first one is Silent Hall Creeper. It's 1 and a blue. It's an enchantment creature, so it fits our theme. Silent Hall Creeper can't be blocked. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Put 2/1/1 counters on Silent Hall Creeper. Draw a card. Silent Hall Creeper becomes a copy of another target creature you control. So really cool card because it allows us to do 2 other things before it becomes a copy. And so then you can play it out and then you can copy it later on, which I really like the ability to do it post entering combat, because nothing is worse than holding a clone in your hands because you got nothing on your board to copy. So love that. Next up, we have Lazav the Multifarious. This is blue and a black legendary shapeshifter. So legendary again, when it enters the battlefield, surveil 1. Gives a little bit of a surveil ability. Then you can pay X, and it becomes a copy of target creature in your graveyard with mana value X, except its name is Lazav the Multifarious. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it has this ability. So if something dies, you can play this, and it's almost like recursion. Really cool ability and on a nice legendary creature for a low cost. Next up, we have Lazav, Wearer of Faces. This is blue-black, shape-shifting detective. Whenever he attacks, exile a target card from a graveyard. And then investigate. So it doesn't have to be your graveyard, just a graveyard. Then whenever you sack a clue, you may have Lazav become a copy of a creature card exiled with it until end of turn. So this allows us to copy our opponent's stuff, or we can copy our own. Really cool ability on a nice legendary cheap creature. 2/3 as well. Next up, we have Protean Thaumaturge. 1 in a blue, human wizard, constellation. Whenever enchantment enters the battlefield in your control, you may have Protean Thaumaturge, become a copy of another target creature, except it has this ability. So you can constantly be changing what it is as you drop more enchantments onto the battlefield, copying your opponent's stuff, copying your own stuff. Really cool ability. Next up, we have Court of Vantress. This is 2 and 2 blue. When it enters, you become the Monarch. So let's introduce the Monarch into the game. Why not? At the beginning of your upkeep, choose up to 1 target enchantment or artifact. If you're the Monarch, you can create a token that's a copy of it. So you can copy an enchantment or an artifact. If you're not the Monarch, then Court of Vantress becomes a copy of it, except it has this ability. Next up, we have Lazav Demir Mastermind. This one's 2 blue, 2 black, hexproof, 3/3. Love the hexproof. Whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard, you may have it become a copy of that card, except its name is Lazav Demir Mastermind. It's legendary in addition to its other types, and it has hexproof and this ability. So as things die, he can become a copy of it. Really cool ability, and I love that it can continue shapeshift, and that's what all these Lazav cards do, and I think that all of them are really cool, so I added them all to the deck. So there's only one I missed, and the other one wasn't nearly as good as the others, but still a cool set of cards, and ones that I like having in this deck just to add another layer of things. So that is the end of the video, guys. I really appreciate your time checking this out, staying to the end. If you could comment and like. I'm only a few subscribers away from 100, so if you haven't subscribed, please, my goal for the end of the month is 100. Today is the last day. It could really get me over that hump. I'd appreciate it. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.